Alright, Class A, so as far as Unit 6A goes, we have covered everything because you have your vocab note cards. This preterite information is review, and now we are going to talk about your imperfect tense. We're going to talk about what the imperfect tense is used to say. We're going to talk about how to conjugate regular verbs and irregular verbs. So here we go. The imperfect tense is used to say what someone used to do or to describe how things used to be. That's a main use of the imperfect. There are a few other things it's used to say, but that's what we're starting out with. It's used to discuss ongoing or habitual past actions. So say what someone used to do often or as a habit. So here is a sentence with your verb in the imperfect. Marta nadaba los fines de semana. So Marta, and then you can tell if you take the ending off of this that it comes from the verb nadar, which means to swim, on the weekends. So Marta used to swim on the weekends. And that's how we're mostly going to be using the imperfect, is to say what someone used to do. But just so you know, it could also be translated as Marta would swim on the weekends, Marta swam on the weekends, or Marta was swimming on the weekends. But again, the one that I have darker is our main focus, at least to start. Moving on to talk about real quick the other things the imperfect is used for so that your notes are nice and complete. We have a little saying that Senora shared with me, and I like it, called just do it. Of course, this is not how you spell do it, but if I take these letters, it helps me remember the things that the imperfect is used to talk about. So if I take do it, the imperfect is used to discuss description in the past. It's used to say what someone used to do or the way things used to be. I have an arrow here because that's what we're focused on to begin with. It's also used to say what someone was doing or what people were doing. It's used to discuss internal feelings or emotions in the past. And the T is for time. It's used to tell time in the past, which of course we use ser for to tell time. We know that from our ser versus the star notes. Moving on, let's talk about some common expressions used with the imperfect. Right now, you guys are not going to have to decide between using the preterite or the imperfect, but eventually you will, and it's really important to make note of when do I use the preterite to talk about the past and when do I use the imperfect. And these expressions will help when it comes down to that. But de pequeño, if you want to say what you used to do when you were little, of course girls would make it pequeña. If you want to say what you used to do as a child, niño for boys, niña for girls. Or if you want to say when, I used to be young, little, or a child. This right here is the imperfect of ser, so we'll be getting to that. It's going to be one of the irregulars. A veces means sometimes or at times. Muchas veces, many times. Siempre or casi siempre, always or almost always. And then if you want to say every day, every month, every year, you use this phrase, todos or todas, los or las, depending on what you're talking about. If you're saying every week, which is semana, that's feminine, so you'd say todas las semanas, because what you're literally saying is all of the weeks. But if you want to say every month, which is el mes, todos los meses, since that's masculine. You also often use the imperfect with the word antes, which means before, or entonces, which means then. Now we need to talk about how to conjugate verbs into the imperfect. You already have one example sentence in your notes about Marta when she used to swim, and you saw that that was nadaba. So let's find out why. Here we go. Alright, so your AR endings, of course you take off the AR and you add aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. For ER-IR verbs, they share the same chart like they do in the preterite, so that's really nice. Ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. Accents on all of the first I's. I say first I's because of vosotros has two. And then this little bit over here just talks about how user-friendly the imperfect is. There are no stem changers, there are no irregular yos, and there's only 3 irregulars. And you can see from these two charts, and you'll see from the irregulars, it's very important to note that there will always be an accent on the first letter of the nosotros. Of course, I don't mean the first letter of, if I was conjugating comer, for example, and I say comiamos, I don't mean the accent goes on the C. I mean the first letter of the ending, like habemos or iamos, or the first letter of the irregulars, which we're about to see next. Moving on. All right. There's only 3 irregulars, and they are ir, ser, and ver. I'm only going to give you the yo form and the nosotros form of the verbs. And then I want you to, probably in pencil, fill in what you think the rest of them will be. And you could say, Profe, how do you expect me to know what you haven't taught me yet? But you'd be surprised. Some of you will get this right. Ask yourself, what do I think I'm going to do to the to form and the he, she form? And you can look at these endings for an example. What are the differences from here to here and here to here? And so on and so forth. Give it a try. So I'm going to ask you guys to finish these charts. Ser, which you already saw in the phrase when I used to be young, the yo form is era, and the nosotros is éramos. Remember, there's those accents on the first letter of the nosotros. And ver, the only thing that's special about ver is that it keeps its E. So it still takes, I'm going back one more time, these endings, but for no good reason, it keeps its E. So again, to get a completion grade on your notes, I would like you to make an attempt at least at the rest of these charts in the imperfect. And those are your imperfect notes. Good job.